Hello everyone, welcome to my Resident Evil 3 Remake, Inferno difficulty, no damage, no shop items, S rank walkthrough, and this is going to be from Kendo's gun shop to the hospital area. So, this entire part of the game isn't so bad, aside from one sequence, and it's the sequence coming up involving Nemesis's rocket launcher, because what they've done for Inferno difficulty has made this section absolutely miserable, and you're forced to take a very technical approach to this section coming up, because what the game wants you to do, it seems, is it wants you to reach each of the corners and wait for Nemesis to start walking towards you, because if you try to run away from Nemesis, he will start running, and then he will either fire his rocket launcher at you, or he will do his really fast charge attack. And you do not want that, because they put any alpha parasites in this encounter, which only makes this encounter worse. Like, this is an encounter built for spectacle. It's not built for player agency. And the fact that you're forced to do this just completely diminishes the whole epic value of this entire section. See right there. That any alpha parasite is always going to take the exact same amount of time to attack you, so you can easily dodge him. But then this guy is completely random. I don't know the best way to get past that guy, and if you're wondering why I rushed, even though I said you're supposed to wait around the corner, it's just because I was getting very impatient. So, don't make my mistake. After Nemesis kills those two enemies, wait around the corner. There are times when they won't die, however, which is very strange. So, you might have to pump additional shots in just to make sure they're dead. And then just wait for Nemesis to come around the corner, and then you just have to watch the second any alpha parasite, see what he does, and dodge accordingly. There are times when he can grab you during the roll animation, so what I recommend you do is kind of stay near the left wall, and then dodge, and then let the any alpha parasite grab you, so that Nemesis can actually hit him. Nemesis has saved me so many times from an any alpha parasite's grab on that section, and it's such a shame I couldn't get any footage of it in this walkthrough. But regardless, that section's done now. I really do not like that section. The fact that you're forced to look at that section from a technical perspective to make it accommodating for the difficulty is very questionable at best. There's a reason why you don't augment sections built around spectacle rather than player agency, because when you do decide to arbitrarily add player agency to such sections, they just don't flow correctly, and I got screwed so much by bullcrap on that section. Like, for instance, if Nemesis happens to make you flinch with his rockets, you will be vulnerable to attacks during the animation, and you can't cancel it, which only shines light on how much the developers were asleep at the wheel when designing this game. I mean, did they not learn anything from Resident Evil 4? There's a reason why you put iframes in for uncontrollable animations that have varying degrees of triggers. It's like, why not just kill me, rather than put me in an animation that only drags out the gameplay? I'm gonna definitely put those moments in the next part of my poor designs of RE3 Remake videos, and I'm not even sure when it will end. That just shows how much bullcrap this game embraces. But we are now in the RPD area, which is a pretty simple section despite the overwhelming hordes of enemies, and we are playing as a new character, which is Carlos, and I'm going to mainly talk about Carlos rather than what's happening in this section. Just follow what I do, and you'll be fine. But Carlos has a lot to offer on this take of Resident Evil 3 Remake. Compared to Resident Evil 2 Remake, the side character content on this game actually has more to it to make it feel different in a way that's interesting. If you saw my knife-only walkthrough of Resident Evil 2 Remake, you might have noticed that I was very negative towards the side character content of that game. Nothing that the side characters did diversified the gameplay in a way that was unique. All you did as Sherry was just avoid Chief Irons in an interactive cutscene, and all you did as Ada was run past a bunch of zombies, do some minor puzzles, get past Mr. X, and that was it. The side character content was so lackluster, unimaginative, too short, and barely any effort was exerted by the developers. However, Resident Evil 3 Remake is different in that aspect. Carlos has some unique weapons, he fights very differently compared to Jill, the kind of sections he is in feel very different compared to what you've done so far as Jill, and you get to do more as him. And on the topic of how he fights, Carlos doesn't have a dodge like Jill does. He actually has a shoulder barge that can stun enemies and keep them stun locked on the ground. He can also do a cross punch that can knock back enemies, and any enemy that was knocked back can stumble other enemies. So the stumble mechanic that was first introduced in Resident Evil 4 is back in this game, which is very helpful. But back to the cross punch. The cross punch can either be triggered in three ways. The first way is by pressing R1 at the right moment during the recovery frames of his shoulder barge. The second way is by doing the shoulder barge just before an enemy attacks. And the third way is by doing the shoulder barge on enemies that are in unique stun animations, such as when they are stunned by flash grenades or generators. Putting them in a stun animation by shooting them does not work, which seems really silly to me. But the first option is helpful against zombies that do the hardcore difficulty grab, or against hunters. And when I say hardcore difficulty grab, I mean the first grab animation that zombies do that is not the long range grab that any alpha parasites can do. The first grab that Brad did against me was the long-range grab, if you need a reference. But when it comes to zombies that do the hardcore difficulty grab, and that is the case with every single zombie on this part, you can actually hit them with the shoulder barge before they do the animation if you time it right. Once you stun them, you then press R1 the moment you see Carlos raise his head to knock him over with the cross punch. Hunters can be stun locked with this method, but it's not a very reliable method as it is prone to error on your part and on the game's part a lot of the times. Now, for the second method to trigger the cross punch, it takes a lot of practice to get the timing down on the attacks, and the timing on the cross punch is more strict compared to the dodge that Jill does. With the grabs that the zombies do, it's more efficient to run towards them before timing the cross punch, so that you're afforded more leniency with timing the counter. Finally, for the third method, there's never really a need to do the cross punch on stunned enemies aside from the final sequence in the RPD building, where you have to stun the horde of zombies with a flash grenade, then punch a stunned enemy just as the pale head comes through the door to knock him back. I mean, overall, the shoulder barge plus cross punch combo sounds reliable, but it's not as reliable as Jill's dodge for a couple of reasons. The first reason is the lack of iframes on the cross punch. You can't move Carlos during the cross punch animation for a couple of seconds, so it's easy for the enemies to get the drop on him. The second reason is that Carlos doesn't have a knife counter animation when he aims after a cross punch, so it diminishes the value of that combo. The third reason is that the shove that Carlos does has ambiguous detection. There are times when it looks like Carlos made contact with an enemy, but he actually didn't, and this can screw you, and no more so is it apparent than when you're fighting hunters. Hunters at times just don't register a flinch when you use the shove again after a successful cross punch. This is a problem, as you end up being slow to react when expecting contact with the hunter, so you're stuck in the recovery frames of the shove, and then the hunter can attack you and damage you, and if it does the instant kill attack, you are dead. Finally, the fourth reason why I don't appreciate the combo that much is because Carlos isn't given much range on his shove. This is a problem when dealing with long-range attacks. Hunters, for instance, can do this long-range poke that Carlos' shove can't detect that properly. Jill, on the other hand, has no problems whatsoever with dodging that particular move, because the dodge just has better detection compared to Carlos' shove plus cross-punch combo. Based on these reasons, I much prefer Jill's dodge compared to Carlos' combo. I just feel the enemies are built more for Jill's dodge. Jill is way better at dealing with hunters compared to Carlos. But regardless, I have to give Capcom credit for attempting to diversify the gameplay in a way that's interesting and not lazy. This is a step up from Resident Evil 2 Remake. But be really careful when coming down the staircase, because if you're running down that hallway, you'll alert the lickers to your positions, and they will come after you. And unfortunately on this game, the knife doesn't do the exact same thing that Resident Evil 2 Remake did, where you could deal multiple hits in one slash and just stunlock lickers. So, lickers are far more dangerous on this game compared to Resident Evil 2 Remake. And also right here, make sure you pick up those resources before picking up the battery, because the moment you pick up the battery, the zombie that's in this room will get up off the ground and start to attack you. And this is the problem, because Brad's going to try to bust through the door to get to you, and it varies how long it takes for him to get through the door. And I believe on Inferno difficulty, even if you successfully take out Brad before entering the RPD building, he's still going to appear here. So it's very pointless to even try to kill Brad before entering the RPD building. But watch out for that licker. The lickers on this game work pretty much the same way as Resident Evil 2 Remake, where upon first starting their investigative animation, if you wait a second, you'll be able to run past them, and they are very slow to react to you. And this right here, you need this flash grenade. The flash grenade is absolutely essential for this sequence because there's going to be a horde of zombies, and you have to use the flash grenade to stun them. But make sure you time it, because there is a zombie getting up off the ground, and if you throw your flash grenade too early, he will not get stunned. And there you go. They're all stunned, even the ones around this next corner somehow. And then all you gotta do here is punch a stunned zombie to stun that pale head that went through the door, and then get to this door very fast before the enemies close in on you. And that is the end of the RPD section. But make sure you pick up this flash grenade before leaving. And now we're going to transition over to Jill. And we are coming up on the first bad boss of the game. So I don't know why they got lazy with the bosses on this game, but the second and third boss fights are literally the exact same thing, only with a different aesthetic to it. And how they typically go is, at the very beginning of the fight, you have to deal a certain amount of damage to Nemesis, which is quite a lot of damage because he has so much life, and it makes no sense. Then, on the next phase, he's going to start to roar to indicate he's starting the next phase. Then he's just going to run around the outskirts of the arena, and you have to knock him down by using a mine round or an explosive round. And for the third boss fight, you can use electricity by shooting these buttons that will electrocute him when he's on a certain tank. And then he gets knocked over, and it does absolutely no damage to him, so the fall damage he incurs when he falls back into the arena does absolutely no damage, and the electricity in the third boss fight does absolutely no damage to him, so then you have to proceed to damage him even more, and then he's going to go into the third phase where he starts banging his feet on the ground. But it's literally the exact same thing as the second phase, only he gains access to like 1 or 2 moves. Like, does that not sound like the laziest boss design ever? And they say this game is designed for knife only, but if you try to do this guy knife only, you're gonna be stuck on him for about half an hour. And on the third boss fight, when you have all those zombies and paleheads supporting him, there is no way you're gonna be able to do that fight knife only on an Inferno difficulty without taking any damage. It's physically impossible because of how bullcrap that fight is. But the best way to deal with Nemesis is to use the flame rounds from the grenade launcher or the shotgun. And with the flame rounds specifically, you have to wait until he is not on fire before firing the flame rounds at him. Because if you fire the flame rounds when he's not on fire, it'll be a guaranteed stun, and he will take burning damage over time. If you shoot him when he's on fire, he will not elicit any kind of hit stun, which is stupid. The explosive rounds and the mine rounds will consistently stun him, but they do barely any damage. On Serp17's Twitch livestream, the damage he did to this boss was about 1% of his life bar when he was using the explosive or the mine rounds. With the flame rounds, it was way more, and with the acid rounds, it was about as equal in damage, maybe even less though. But what I do for the second boss fight is I just run around the statue, because he has no way of doing these close range attacks on me when I just keep circling the statue as sharply as I do. And I always run around the statue in a clockwise direction, so that he's always going to be doing this particular slash right there where he uses his right hand. Because that move, you can easily see it coming, and you have to dodge away from it. I mean, there are moments when he can't hit you if you're taking it very sharply with your turns. But just to proceed with a bit of caution, always try to dodge away from him. And you can run under that move if you so choose, if you're in the right spot, because the hitbox on that move is pretty fair. And he also has a couple of other moves. He has this move, which never really hits you because of the fact that the statue's in the way. And he has this move as well, which has some pretty weird detection, because at times the hands can touch you and they don't put you into the grab animation. But it will instantly kill you on this difficulty, so you have to be very careful of that move and always dodge away from it. But I've now put him into the second phase where he roars, and now he is just going to circle the arena by just running on the walls and running on the cars. And what you have to do is you need to plant a mine round on that path so that when he gets hit by it, he will get knocked over. And one thing you need to know about the grenade launcher, you can reload cancel the grenade launcher. So what I do if I'm trying to swap between each of the individual grenades is I press L1, and then I immediately swap to my pistol, and then I swap back to the grenade launcher to cancel the animation. So if I, for instance, wanted to put flame rounds in, and I have mine rounds currently equipped, I press L1 to do the animation of loading the flame rounds, I switch to my pistol, and then I swap back to the grenade launchers, and then boom, she will have the flame rounds equipped. But there's one thing you have to bear in mind if you plan on doing that. You cannot dodge while reloading. I know, right? It sounds really stupid. Considering that in Resident Evil Revelations you could dodge while reloading, why can't you do the same in this game? So what that pretty much means is that if Nemesis is close to you and he doesn't attack when you go into a reload animation, you will never be able to dodge it. It will be physically impossible because the reload animation will supersede the dodge animation. It's about as stupid as in Resident Evil 2 Remake, where you break your knife and you can't move because it's forced to do the animation of the character staring at their broken knife, which allowed the enemies to get a free pass in hitting you. It's really dumb. It should not exist. And if you have auto reload on, it's gonna really screw you when you go into that reload animation automatically and you can't dodge, unless you swap weapons, but you're just not thinking about it because you have auto reload on. But right now, we're in the third phase of the boss fight, where he's banging his feet on the ground, and it's literally the exact same thing. It's like, why even give it a phase transition animation when it's the exact same, aside from the fact that he has a couple of different moves. But you will never be able to see it because you'll be running away from him so much. So, just do the same thing. Use the mine rounds to stun him when he's on the walls like this, and then hit him with a flame round. Always make sure you're hitting him with the flame rounds when he's not on fire, and when he is on fire, use your shotgun or your pistol in order to deal with him. And by the way, do not be in his line of sight whenever he is knocked down, because then he will do moves like this that will allow him to do very sharp turns or have really long range. Another important tip to note is when he is running along the walls, always make sure you're out of his line of sight as well. If you're in his line of sight, by the time he finishes that animation, he will stand still, and he will do his jump attack on you. And on this difficulty, he has no kind of delay whatsoever when doing that jump attack. The moment he stops, he will immediately do the jump attack. If you are out of his sight long enough while he is busy running along the walls, he will be forced to climb up the clock tower, and I actually discovered an exploit you can do on this section only. So, whenever he goes on top of the clock tower and he jumps down, if you stand in just the right spot and you move at just the right moment, you can get it so that he will jump on top of the statue and it will completely cancel his jump attack animation, and then he's going to force himself to come back on the ground and just not do any damage to you. So, if you're not too confident in dodging his jump attack, use that method and you will be fine. It works pretty consistently, but I still recommend doing the dodge just in case he doesn't land on the statue square on. But there's about a minute left in this fight before I finally kill him. And also, if you need to get more mine rounds, there are mine rounds inside of the cars, but the way they're designed is so stupid. You have to get Nemesis to do a particular slam attack so that he breaks off the doors. You can't just simply shoot the windows and get the mine rounds inside the cars. The good news is, however, is at the end of the boss fight, all of the doors are open, so you can gain access to the mine rounds at the end of the boss fight, and you will definitely need those mine rounds for certain parts of the laboratory section, and also for the third boss fight, because while the game does give you access to 6 explosive rounds before the third boss fight, having a couple of mine rounds is very handy, just in case he's running around on the outskirts of the arena. You can also use the explosive rounds and the mine rounds to keep Nemesis stun locked so that he can never get a chance to go on the outskirts of the arena. Because the zombies and the paleheads only spawn when he goes on the outskirts of the arena. But the biggest problem is that there's not going to be a lot of ammo at your disposal to allow you to do that. So you are forced to eventually fight the zombies at some point. But if you do want to fight the zombies, you need to use a shotgun. The shotgun is so damaging against them. And especially against paleheads. The Magnum and the shotgun are the best weapons to use against paleheads. And finally, the boss goes down. And now that he's down, I'm just going to search the area for some supplies, and then I'll make a save in the hospital area. And I wanted so desperately to make my save before the Defend Jill sequence, but I was getting screwed by one part of the hospital sequence so much, and it involves 2 hunters in a really confined space. But I'll get to that sequence once I get to that part of the walkthrough. But that is the end of this video. Stay tuned for the future parts. Thank you all for watching, and you take care now.
Okay. I promise.